Like I said at the end of the last part of this episode, I wasn't sure if that would be the last deal that got done, if that would be the last segment of the show. It ended up not being the last segment of the show because I'm here with Brad Rowland. We're going to talk the DeAndre Hunter extension, 4 years, 90 million. Like I said, this deal is going to go, or this show is going to go on the podcast feed tomorrow when we do our big extensions discussion. But I figured I'd go live on this one and just kind of break it all down with Brad. Why not? What's going on, buddy?
Sam, thank you for having me. It's been a weird night, but here we are talking extensions. There was a full 2-hour gap between the extension deadline and when it was reported, and it's been a weird one. But I'm happy to be here with you.
I am excited to be here as well. I couldn't be more thrilled to get to break down this DeAndre Hunter deal, who I've been a fan of for a long time. I've been a really big fan of DeAndre Hunter as a player. I thought the second year it seemed like was a real breakout for him. He averaged 15 points, 5 rebounds, had showcased a lot of the defensive value that we had anticipated from him coming out of Virginia. The problem was he played 23 games that year, and we didn't really get a chance to see the full version of DeAndre Hunter. That is the issue with DeAndre. We have not gotten a chance to see him on the court enough. He has played 139 games in 3 years, and here the Hawks have signed him to a 4-year, $90 million extension because, frankly, DeAndre had them over a barrel. It's exceptionally difficult to find players like DeAndre Hunter who are 6'8", who are great on-ball defenders, who can shoot, who can create their own shot a little bit. This is what these guys get paid, even if they haven't necessarily proven it yet. Right, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, that's the baseline here is even before you get into the Hawks individual context on the team side where they already invested in him so heavily and they don't have anything behind him at the 3 and all of that stuff. What you said is perfectly said there. Like, he's a 6'8", two-way forward that has that skill set that every single team wants. And generally speaking, no, he's not proven it to be worth this contract at this point in time. His performance on the court through 3 seasons, I agree with you, by the way, on year 2. Like, his year 2 performance in that sample of 23 games was really, really good. But last year, he took a step back and he played more, but he also played a little bit worse, I thought, overall. And given that he's not the youngest guy in the world either for a draft prospect, as I know you know well. So it's interesting. Like, it's not a situation where you can just kind of take one side as it is. On the performance side, he's not been worth this. But on the other side, if he had a good year in year 4, he would have gotten a 9-figure contract. I'm pretty confident in that just because of the skill set that he offers and just the market and where the cap is going, which I know you talked about a lot too. But like, by the end of this deal, new TV deal, and like, numbers are going to be through the roof, and that kind of it all kind of goes into a barrel, and this is what you come up with.
Well, and that's the big thing too. The TV deal, I think, has kind of skewed some of these numbers, right? So this is essentially the OG Anunoby contract. I know that OG Anunoby got 4 years and 72 million, but with the way the cap is going to rise for next season, this 4-year, $90 million contract, that is essentially going to be something like, I think the number is, I texted it to someone who works for a team earlier. The number is basically like 15.5% of the cap. The OG Anunoby deal that he signed with Toronto, I think, was something like 14.5% of the cap. So it's just like a very small, slight raise on that amount. And everyone loved the OG Anunoby deal. It's just that I think that our brains are struggling to react to the reality of what the rising cap looks like at this point. And I thought OG Anunoby had been a little bit more proven and had been a little bit better than DeAndre, had been a little bit more reliable. OG has also struggled to stay on the court from time to time here and there with Toronto. So it's just I would almost bet you that they used that contract as the jumping point for this one, kind of similar to the Tyler Hero and Jordan Poole deals, where it's like, okay, give me a little bit more than the last guy that signed. Okay, give me a little bit higher of a percentage than what the OG Anunoby signed for when he signed his extension with the Raptors. It just makes sense to me that this is kind of where we are and what we're looking at with this DeAndre Hunter deal, even if the numbers are greater because the salary cap is going to continue to skyrocket in the next couple of years.
Yeah, it makes sense for sure. And there wasn't that natural comp in this particular class. Like he lands between RJ Barrett and Keldon Johnson, basically, in how much money he got in this. And but neither one of those guys is a perfect comp for him. And like
Yeah.
you said at the very top of this, the Hawks, like he had the Hawks over a barrel, which is part of this too. And the Hawks are trying to win, and the Hawks are above the cap already with no plans to have cap space in the future and no way to replace him. And all of that goes into it as well. But yeah, I think that's a good point going back to OG. And yeah, I think OG had proven more, but Hunter was a top 5 pick, and that's sticky, like like whether it should be or
Yeah, it
not
is.
is a different conversation. But it is in reality, it just is. When especially for a team that traded up for him too, the Hawks invested famously, multiple assets to go up and get him. That was their guy they wanted to build with Trey, and it hasn't gone to plan so far. But I think they know, or at least they hope, that as long as he stays on the floor, this is going to look fine. But anytime you do a deal like this, you're taking the risk away from the player and putting it on the team, and they have to know that too.
Man, the Keldon Johnson deal just keeps looking better to me. That was a deal that when he signed that deal, I was like, this is cheap. There's no way that he's not worth this contract. Keldon Johnson, for what it's worth, signed what I believe is like, what is it? It's like a 472 or something like that.
Yeah, it was like 474 with incentives. So yeah, 468 or whatever the actual number is. Yes.
It's an insane number for someone who averaged 17 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists on 47, 40, 76 last year at 22 years old. Like Keldon Johnson being much younger than DeAndre Hunter as well. That's a weird one. That's an interesting comp now that I think about it.
Honestly, like we just said, it goes back to draft slot. Like, do you think Keldon Johnson signs that deal if he's the 4th overall pick? I don't. You know what I mean?
No,
if
he's the 4th overall pick, he goes what? He's probably $100 million player, Keldon Johnson.
Yeah,
right?
and that's one of those people don't always believe me when I say that. This is a great example of that. Hunter, you could certainly, I think that Keldon has been better so far. You can say you would rather have DeAndre. He probably has higher upside. He's got more physical tools than Keldon Johnson does. But like season for season, Keldon's been more productive to this point, and he gets 20 million less because of, in part, where they were drafted.
Yeah, and he's 2 years younger than DeAndre is essentially too. That's crazy. That kind of went through my mind right as you said that. Holy hell. I think the thing with DeAndre that's worth noting is not only did he have them over a barrel, because players like DeAndre Hunter are just very scarce. Having someone that's 6'8", this is this good of a on-ball defender, this is this good of a potential shooter, that can be something of a creator from time to time. It's just really hard to find these guys. It's actually a skill set that the Hawks desperately need next to Trey Young as well. Like this is the kind of thing that when you have it, you can't let it go, because especially with Trey Young being as small as he is and being the defensive liability that he is, as good as I think Trey Young is, like I think Trey Young is one of the 5 best offensive players in the NBA. He does take something off the court defensively, and you need to surround him with as many good shooters who are high-level on-ball defenders as you can, because this is how you insulate Trey Young and build a great team around him.
Yeah, and since they've always loved DeAndre Hunter, but part of that is, like you just said, the skill set that they're looking for. And dating back to that same draft night, they purposely took DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish in the same top 10 with the idea of doing exactly what you just said, pairing Trey with these two-way wings. And the Cam thing didn't work out the way they hoped it would, but you're taking two swings there. You're hoping that DeAndre now works out as one of them. And they kind of invested in a different way with DeJounte Murray to help with the defense. He's a little bit more of a guard defender, obviously, and more of an all-ball player on offense. But it's kind of the same principle. You're still trying to insulate Trey and making Trey's life as easy as it could possibly be. And Hunter is kind of their last bullet to do that at the 3. Like, I know I like AJ Griffin, but that's a future-facing thing, and the Hawks are in win-now mode right now. Whether they should be or not, different conversation. But they're definitely pushing it in. There's no question about that locally. Like they want to win immediately and want to win for a while, which is a tough thing to kind of walk that line on. But this is a big year for Hunter. Every time I talk to anybody locally or whoever about the Hawks this year, my X factor has been DeAndre Hunter at every turn. So it's not that it changes that much now for the long term, because that was already going to be the case, but he's really the only guy on the team that does what he does at this point. And that's a skill set that when you're facing the Celtics and you're facing these teams that have these big wings, he's their only guy to throw at them. So health is huge for him, but just performance wise, like he was the guy that raises their ceiling. Like clearly he's not their best player. Trey, DeJounte, Clint Capella, John Collins, they're all better than him right now, but he's their swing guy for me, both short term and long term. And I think they probably know that, and they're investing in it as such.
Well, and you mentioned this at the start. This is a guy that was not awesome last year. He did not have a great year last year, based on what looked like a leap in his sophomore year, right?
Yeah.
So where do you think the best places for improvement are for DeAndre Hunter? Where does he need to take a leap moving forward in order to be worth this contract?
Yeah, I think it's a few little things, like his dip from year 2 to year 3. A couple things are like maybe even injury related. Like he's had some wrist stuff. His ball handling got a little bit loose last year. That's an area he's got to improve on. Not that he's going to be this, huge creator for them, but his handle felt loose to me for most of last season. And I think the turnovers kind of followed. He's never been a great passer. That's probably not going to be a huge part of his game, but just when you're not a great ball handler and you're not a great passer, that's not a great thing to have at the 3 for any team. Even when you have Trae Young and DeJounte Murray at the 1 and the 2, that's the one big thing offensively. And he got to the rim a lot better in year 2. He shot the 3 well last year. I will say that's the one thing that he did in year 3 better was shot 38% from 3. And if that's sticky, the Hawks are going to love that. I think he's always kind of been a little bit too in love with his long 2 game, even dating back to college at Virginia. But I think he's slowly figuring out that he can still do that a little bit, and they encourage it. Nate McMillan likes his long 2s as much as anybody. But I think DeAndre taking more 3s would be a good thing and making them like he did last year. And the other big thing, in addition to just staying healthy, is like there's no reason why he's a bad rebounder. Like he's 6'10", 6'8", and like 220, 230. Why is he averaging 3 rebounds a game? Like him and Trae Young had almost the same rebound rate last year on the defensive end of the floor. That should just never happen. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to be this great rebounder, but just using his physical tools better in all aspects. But rebounding is a very easy one to track because it was inexplicable. He had a 10% defensive rebound rate last year as a 6'8" forward with like bulk and everything. Like it just shouldn't be that way. So it doesn't have to be this breakout for me. That's what I've been trying to stress even before the deal got done, just talking about the hypothetical deal, was that they're not necessarily needing DeAndre Hunter to be a star. Like he got some unfair, like baby Kawhi comps early in his career in Atlanta because people are just being silly. You know how that works with any 6'8" forward, but he just needs to be a high level role player. Like OG's a great example, honestly. Not that he's necessarily has to be OG. OG's a better defender than him, all of that stuff. But just like kind of leveling out and taking away the weaknesses, because that's part of the appeal is to have few weaknesses. So rebound and handle the ball a little bit better, be more decisive. We've seen good signs in the preseason. It's the preseason, so who knows? But he's been a little bit more decisive. He, this dating back to his college days too. He's always been kind of a robotic player. He kind of thinks the game a little bit too much and is not always the most decisive guy. And I want to see a little bit more quick twitch stuff from him. Just get it and go. Don't think so much. I think we see that a little bit, but it's so early that I don't want to say that's like accomplished, but that's something to sort of circle to.
Well, and you see it in his passing as well. Like he misses, timed passing looks because he just is robotic and seems to be like, okay, I'm looking, I know I need to make this pass. I'm going to make this pass. And then it goes away. And he's like, oh shit, I actually can't make this pass now because this guy is no longer open. So it's just that little stuff. It's hard because it's just all on the margins with DeAndre. Like it's hard to explain and like dive deep, like, because this is a player that should be more effective than he has been outside of that 20 game sample in his second season, right? Like he should be a better rebounder. He should be a better rotational defender. Like we didn't really talk about that, but like, I feel like he doesn't often utilize his length quite enough off the ball and make an impact in the way that he is capable of making, given that length, given that he's a smart dude, like he's a smart player. It's just that like that twitch that you brought up, it's just not always there for him. And that's it's hard to know if that can come or if it just is what it is. And this could be like a Jeff Green style situation where he's a better on ball defender than Jeff Green, certainly, but maybe he'll be more of like a finishing player offensively as opposed to like a true creator where he's finishing possessions by shooting and by creating a shot and shooting, as opposed to making plays happen around him. Really interesting player. I loved him in college. I guess I wish that I thought there was more there in terms of the ball handling and in terms of the ability to create a shot, but he's always been a little bit more theoretical than like what he is in practice, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And part of the tricky thing with Hunter is that it would have been probably better for the team the last couple of years if he just became a strict 3-and-D guy, you know? Like if they just kind of encouraged him to not do the things that he's capable of doing
But it's
as a
not good
creator.
it's not what's good for them long term though either.
That's what I mean. There's this give and take where they drafted him thinking he had some juice on offense. Like he's never been a pure 3-and-D prospect. He's always had a little bit of on ball stuff. I mentioned the long twos and stuff like that, but he's got a nice pull up jump shot. He can get to his spots, take away some mismatches. Like he's got good size, and McMillan as his coach like emphasizes that he's very big into mismatch hunting, and Hunter in theory can do some of that stuff, but he's not been good enough to justify it, especially on a team with Trae Young. Like, you know what I mean? Like they've been so good on offense that trying to run more stuff through DeAndre Hunter is not like an appealing thought because he can do it. But wouldn't you rather just have Trae run another pick and roll, and that's better offense for you? So they're in this weird spot where it's kind of figuring out what his role is, because I think the ship of like him being a star has passed. I think there was maybe a fringe thought of that when they drafted him. They shouldn't be banking on that now. He's not the youngest guy. He's like we say, he's 24 years old already. Not that that's super
About
old.
to turn 25.
Yeah, but you can't bank on him like having this huge breakout 25 a game score. Like, he's not going to probably do that, but they're hoping to still have that middle ground where he can be your third option on offense and have that be part of the deal versus some 3-and-D guys that have his skill set maybe become the fourth or fifth guy on offense and they just kind of stand in the corner. They don't want him to do that. Now, it might help them if he did that more often sometimes, but there's a little bit of that balance there. Maybe with DeJounte Murray on the team too, he'll have a little bit less of a playmaking role and he can kind of fit into a more snug offensive fit, because that's kind of the question too, is like he's still probably the third guy in a lot of these lineups, maybe the second guy in some of these lineups. So he's going to have to do a little bit stuff with the ball in his hands, and that's where the ball handling improvement comes in, and hopefully some health, because really at the end of the day, a lot of it comes back to health. Like, I don't want to make that an excuse for him, but you mentioned the games played. Even when he's been out there, he's just kind of always got something nagging. It's not like he's everybody does that, but there's a back thing and an ankle thing and a wrist thing, and it's just something all the time. And I never use the injury prone label until it's earned. I don't think we're there yet with Hunter, but he's definitely just had a lot of stuff going on for the first 3 years of his career. And I don't want to circle this year too much, but it was a big year for him before tonight. It was a big year for him before this contract. It was already going to be a huge year for him. Now, maybe some more confidence. He's got the money, a little bit less pressure. Like, you're not playing for your future earnings. But now it's like, all right, DeAndre, what are you going to be now? It's year 4, and we'll see.
Yeah, like, and you bring up the idea of like the mini Kawhi theory for him, right? Not what he is in actuality, but like some of the stuff what they run for him is a lot of that like mid post stuff where he's just rising up, using his high release point and shooting over the top. And that's just really hard to guard a lot of the time. Like, it is just a very hard shot to guard. He has to make it at 50%, 48% for it to be a worthwhile option offensively. But I don't know. It's a tricky deal. It's a tricky deal because of the injury history. I'm glad you brought up the idea that he just keeps getting nicked up and like keeps, playing when he's not probably 100%, playing 90%. That could lead to more potential moments of like upside, right? Where if he's 100%, maybe he's exploding into his jumper a little bit more and getting a slightly cleaner look and getting a little bit more rhythm on the jumper, right? Like, this stuff is real. Like, that is a real potential outcome, but like, I don't think the injury stuff really changes his the processing, which is ultimately what needs to improve. Like, the looking at the game faster is what needs to happen. And he's in year 4 now. Like you said, this is the year where he needs to showcase that. He's played 139 games now. He's played a season and a half. Even if that's not a lot of games, it's still enough. I think this is the going rate for what this guy is, like, period. This is not an overpay. This is not an underpay. This is exactly what these guys get paid. And it's going to be really interesting this year because the Hawks already have some things where they need to work in DeJounte Murray, which is going to be complicated with Trae Young. They need DeAndre to be able to knock down threes. They need to be able to move the ball quickly. And they need him to make lineups make sense. Like, is he going to start at the 3 or the 4, do you think, for them?
I think Hunter's going to be their 3. I mean, they've kind of already basically announced what they're going to do with Trey and DeJounte and our guy John Collins. I know you are on my side with John
Yeah.
Collins, who's just a good basketball player, and people talk about him like he's not all the time.
John Collins is so good. I
He's a good
don't
basketball
understand
player.
why people don't give John Collins the respect that he deserves. He's a good defender who averages 20 and 10. This is not hard.
I totally agree, and I think this is a different conversation. I think that's honestly, a lot of stuff is about reputation. Like, this John was a bad defender in college and a bad defender as a rookie, and like that just stuck to him, and it's just not true anymore. And it's kind of the same thing with DeAndre Hunter being a top 5 pick. Like, stuff is sticky in the NBA if you're not paying attention. Like, and that's the thing about DeAndre Hunter. There's this school of thought that he's this great defender, and he's a pretty good defender. Like, he's on the ball, he's got all the skills. But you mentioned it before, his off ball processing has never been his strongest suit, even in the draft process.
He and John Collins, like, he's probably a slightly better defender than John Collins.
Yeah,
but they're pretty close. Like,
they're different guys, but also I will on the Hunter thing real quickly, since I forgot to say it earlier. I do think that Murray coming sneakily might help Hunter defensively, just because they've had to put Hunter on the best guy, no matter who the best guy was the last couple years, and that included point guard sometimes. And now that's going to be DeJounte, and they're going to have Hunter on the big wings as he should, but he's not going to have to guard lead guard all-star one night and then turn around and guard this 6'9" guy the next night. Like, he's going to have to be, he'll be a little bit more easily plugged in on like what he's going to do defensively, which might help him.
Yeah, like, gone are the days of the Hawks having to throw Kevin Huerter on like the team's best wing which
happened a lot last year.
Yeah, I know. And like, I think Kevin is okay defensively, by the way. It's just more that he can't deal with those super physical wings, and has his own, like, Kevin's a super smart off-ball defender, can struggle sometimes on ball if he's not in the right matchup. Hawks, man, they keep drafting these guys that theoretically should make sense together and theoretically should be just like slightly better than they are, but they just don't quite hit that. And I don't know what that's about yet. I still haven't been able to put my finger on what's going on there. I don't think it's like a development thing. I think it's literally just like they haven't found the right way to make it all work yet.
Yeah, it's not a bad point. I've liked most of their draft stuff the last several years. I mean, it's generally they're getting the guys that I would consider to be reasonable or better than that picks. I mean, the other one is Okongwu, who's by no fault of his own still behind Capella, because Capella is really good. It's not anybody's fault that they still have to Capella. And Okongwu's awesome. Like, I like that pick. It was a strength on strength draft pick, but he's a really good player. It's just that he's not as good as Capella yet, and he might be. I mean, he might be this year. We'll see. But yeah, they have a lot of talent. I mean, it's an interesting team. They have Bogey, who's kind of injured still and banged up, and that might cause some problems for them with some spacing stuff. But they have a lot of talent, and I still think Hunter's the swing guy. I mean, I know there's other guys that are also swingy. The Trey DeJounte thing is going to get a lot of headlines, as it should. Those guys are really good playing together, and it'll be interesting to see how that all fits. But I think that Hunter really might be the difference between a team that's like in the play-in and the 3 seed or something like that. If Hunter has a great season, he might be a 6 to 8 win swing for them if he's bad versus if he has a good season. And I don't want to overstate it either, but he raises their ceiling or caps it depending on how he looks.
So this will be the last segment of the episode today. Thanks, Brad, for coming on. Brad, tell the people where they can find you. Tell the people what you've got going on here.
Sam, well, thank you for having me on the show. I am a listener. Shouts to Spins. Hey, Spins.
That's very nice.
You can find, I cover the Hawks. That's my regular beat. I am the host of the Locked On Hawks podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network every day or so. That's always content there. You can find me on Twitter at BT Rowland. I also write about basketball at Diamond Up Rocks alongside another guest of this podcast previously, Robbie Calland, Martin Rickman, everybody over there. We have fun together. I do draft stuff there and NBA stuff there and college basketball stuff there. We have a lot of fun, and that's all I have to share at this point.
Brad, Robbie, Martin, every time I'm in Vegas for Summer League, I always try and hang out with them for at least one night, because I know that there will be gambling and I know that there will be enjoyable times to be had. They are just absolutely terrific people over at Up Rocks. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember, rate, review, subscribe, do everything you can to support the show. Go to the YouTube channel. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vecini. We'll be back later this week with an actual breakdown of basketball games. We've been talking so much about theoretical shit. We're now going to get to talk about actual stuff that happens. I'm so excited. We'll talk soon.